Everyone thought they knew the kind of boy who would never stand out, too quiet, too poor, too invisible. But on that day, in that school where the uniform was valued more than honesty, and where last names mattered more than life stories, something broke the cycle, something unexpected. When the piano in the music room finally fell silent, no one could look at Elijah Turner the same way. And it all began with a taunt, disguised as an opportunity. It was the start of the school year at Lincoln High, a renowned school surrounded by high walls, symmetrical gardens, and reputations forged in boardroom meetings. Inside, everything seemed to gleam, except Elijah. He arrived carrying not just a worn-out backpack, but also the weight of being different. He came from Eastwood, where the streets knew too much about abandonment and too little about fulfilled promises. His grandmother, Martha Turner, was all he had. And even with hands marked by years of hard labor, she saw in Elijah a future no one else seemed to see. At the school's reception, the staff member didn't even bother to hide her judgmental glance when she saw his name on the scholarship list. Room 1C, up the stairs. No smile, no greeting, just the sound of computer keys echoing in the background. Elijah thanked her softly and walked to the indicated classroom. In the hallway, glances crossed like arrows. Perfectly pressed uniforms, designer backpacks, cutting-edge smartphones. He, with his meticulously ironed shirt from his grandmother and borrowed sneakers from a neighbor, stood out like a note played off-key. In the classroom, the teacher didn't even lift his eyes when Elijah entered. "You must be the scholarship kid. Sit in the back." He obeyed, moving through the rows as if walking on glass. No one made an effort to smile. A girl whispered something to the boy next to her, and they both laughed without hiding it. Elijah didn't react. He had already learned that in certain places, silence was stronger than any response. During the first few days, he kept a low profile. He took notes diligently, completed his assignments with dedication, and avoided confrontations. But the comments came in all forms. Does he even know how to use that tablet? You can smell his neighborhood from here. He doesn't even talk right. Phrases like these blended into the sound of lessons like unavoidable noise. The only moment of peace was during lunch break, when Elijah sat under a tree by the parking lot and ate the simple meal his grandmother had lovingly prepared. That's where the principal appeared for the first time. Mr. Whitaker, a man with an always impeccable suit and a gaze that seemed to measure someone's worth in 3 seconds. "Turner, right? You put piano on the scholarship form, didn't you?" Elijah, surprised by the approach, responded with a shy nod. "Yes, sir, a little." The principal gave a half smile. "We'll see about that at the next parent meeting." And he walked away. Elijah didn't understand. He thought it was just talk. But in music class, the teacher, Ms. Kendrick, confirmed it. There would be a performance on Friday, and at the principal's suggestion, Elijah would open the event with a solo piano piece. The news hit like a bomb. Some laughed openly. Others gave mock applause. Connor, the most popular boy in the class, quipped, "Is this a charity show? Because I'm ready to donate laughs." Elijah felt his stomach churn. The intention was clear, to ridicule him. But when he got home, he saw his grandmother waiting with a plate of rice and beans on the table, her eyes tired yet hopeful. She asked how his day had been. He replied, "I'm playing piano on Friday." She smiled, unaware of the details. And that smile was the push he needed. Over the next few nights, Elijah went down to the basement where an old piano donated years ago by a church lady stood. Its keys were worn, but its soul remained alive. He practiced in silence, night after night, reliving every memory, every humiliation, every unspoken word. Friday arrived with overcast skies. The auditorium was prepared with grandeur, chairs neatly arranged, spotlights positioned, parents settling in with their phones at the ready. Mr. Whitaker gave an opening speech, extolling values like meritocracy and inclusion, ironies that didn't escape Elijah. To start the evening, a special performance, the principal announced with a faint smile. "Our scholarship student Elijah Turner will honor us with a piano performance." A murmur rippled through the students, stifled laughter, scornful glances. Elijah took the stage. His hands were sweating. His heart pounded like a drum. But as he sat at the keys, he closed his eyes and began. The piece he chose wasn't famous. It was his own, a composition of his creation. The gentle introduction soon gave way to a soaring crescendo. It was pain. It was strength. It was truth. The silence that filled the room wasn't one of disinterest. It was reverence. Parents stopped chatting. Students put down their phones. Miss Kendrick, standing off to the side, discreetly wiped away a tear. When he finished, the silence lingered for a long second. Then, one clap, then another, and another, until the entire audience rose in a unanimous and unexpected gesture, except the principal. Mr. Whitaker remained seated, arms crossed, face stern. This wasn't part of the plan. This was dangerous. As people left, some parents congratulated Elijah. Teachers shook his hand. Even Connor, who had mocked him before, passed by in silence. But the principal averted his gaze, as if Elijah were invisible. And yet, on that day, for the first time, he had been seen. What happened in the Lincoln High auditorium that night wasn't just a display of talent. It was a silent earthquake that destabilized structures too old to be seen with the naked eye. Elijah's music didn't just silence the laughter. It tore through veils. It shredded the false narrative of equality that had long hidden behind Mr. Whitaker's polished speeches. And perhaps what bothered the principal most was exactly that. Elijah didn't ask for permission, didn't demand space. He simply showed up, and that was enough for everyone to see the farce. The following Monday, the hallways were different. No one said it openly, but the glances spoke volumes. Now, as he passed, Elijah wasn't ignored. He was noticed, and not with scorn, but with something new, respect mixed with discomfort, because respecting Elijah meant admitting a mistake, and not everyone was ready for that. Connor, who had once led the jokes, now lowered his eyes when crossing paths with him. It wasn't an apology, nor regret. It was the beginning of the end of arrogance. Teachers, once so neutral, began greeting Elijah with a discreet nod or a warmer, "Good morning." Even the science coordinator, a methodical and stern man, commented loudly in the teacher's lounge, "That boy has something you can't teach. He has soul." But Whitaker watched it all with cold eyes. The control he exerted over the environment was starting to slip through his fingers. The reputation he had built so carefully, based on appearances and conformity, was being eroded by a boy from Eastwood with an out-of-tune piano and an irrepressible gift. He needed to act, and fast. That same week, Miss Kendrick was called to a private meeting with the principal. The room was dim, the windows half open, and the tone of the conversation started cordial, but soon turned sour. "You've been giving that student a lot of attention," he said bluntly. "Talent is one thing, Ms. Kendrick, but spectacle is another. We're here to shape scholars, not circus performers." She remained calm. "We're here to shape human beings, and some of them, sir, shine brighter when they play than when they solve equations." Her response stung. Whitaker pressed his lips together, leaned back in his chair, and issued a veiled threat. "Just be careful not to invest too much in promises that disappoint. Expectations set too high break with a louder crash." She didn't reply. But as she left the room, she knew. This war wouldn't be clean, and Elijah would need strong allies. In the following days, Kendrick began to move. Discreetly, like someone watering a plant in a garden of thorns. She gathered old files, spoke with former students, sought out forgotten reports. She found patterns that once seemed coincidental. Scholarship students transferred, projects cancelled, voices silenced. And the more she read, the more she understood. Elijah wasn't the first to be stifled. He was just the first to break through the bubble. Meanwhile, Elijah continued his routine. He and his grandmother went to school together in silence, holding hands, hearts full of anticipation. At night, he practiced more than ever. He knew the invitation to audition at the Municipal Conservatory was a rare opportunity, and he wanted to honor it. He played as if praying. Each rehearsal was a reunion with his own story. When the invitation for a new internal event was announced, called Voices of the School, Elijah hesitated. This time, the event had been organized by a group of teachers, led by Kendrick. It would be outdoors, on the school's lawn. Nothing formal. No judges, no medals, just art. But even so, fear crept in. "What if they try to silence me again?" he asked the teacher. "This time, if they try, they'll have to silence many," she replied firmly. The announcement of the event spread like wildfire. Makeshift posters on bulletin boards, messages circulating in parent and student groups, a growing buzz in the hallways. It was as if, for the first time, the school was moving for something real, and that bothered the principal even more. 2 days before the event, Whitaker called an emergency meeting under the guise of pedagogical reorganization. He announced that the event was canceled due to a lack of structure and logistics. He claimed the gym was unavailable, the teachers were overworked, and the calendar didn't allow it. But no one believed him. The school erupted. Teachers protested. Students organized into groups. A discussion circle in the courtyard gathered nearly 100 students. And there, in front of everyone, Ms. Kendrick declared, "We're holding the event, with or without a stage, but we're doing it." And they did. On Friday at 5:45 p.m., the lawn was ready. A borrowed speaker, chairs scattered haphazardly, a simple piano at the center, loaned by a local conservatory that had heard of Elijah. When he arrived, accompanied by his grandmother, he was greeted with applause, not rehearsed, not forced. Applause born from the souls of those who saw truth where there had once been only prejudice. Elijah sat at the piano. There were no stage lights, no spotlights, but there was the sky, and there was silence, a silence full of meaning. He looked at his grandmother, who smiled from the front row, and then he began. The music he played that afternoon wasn't meant to impress. It was meant to liberate. It was a melody built from unshed tears, silenced anger, and unconditional love. The notes flew across the lawn like birds newly freed. Parents cried. Students exchanged silent glances. Teachers were moved. And from the second floor of the main building, Principal Whitaker watched it all with an impassive face and clenched fists. This wasn't just a performance. It was an uprising, a rupture, a peaceful revolution made of chords and courage. When the final note sounded, everyone was on their feet. Thunderous applause, muffled cheers, and tears, many. Ms. Kendrick stepped to the center and called Elijah to the microphone. "Do you want to say something, Elijah?" He hesitated, but then spoke. "I didn't want to prove anything to anyone. I just wanted to be heard. Today I was." And he stepped down from the makeshift stage as if he had finally found solid ground. On Monday, the atmosphere at the school was different. The event, though canceled, had spread through the city. Videos circulated. Blogs commented. Elijah's name became a symbol. Ms. Kendrick seized the moment. She submitted the dossier she had carefully prepared to the Regional Education Board. What would have once been ignored now carried weight. Days later, the response came. 2 inspectors arrived at the school with a white envelope in hand. It was the notice of Mr. Whitaker's temporary suspension. The news spread like wildfire. The hallways, long oppressed by silence, now echoed with freedom. And Elijah? He was in the courtyard, playing the piano through earphones with his grandmother sitting beside him, watching the clouds. Months later, Elijah was invited to close the school's new official event. The auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, and classmates waited in silence. As he took the stage, he saw his grandmother in the front row and smiled. His hands touched the keys, but what echoed wasn't just music. It was memory, justice, and hope. When the final note faded, the applause was unanimous. Standing, everyone recognized. There wasn't just a scholarship student there. There was a symbol, a boy written off who, with dignity, turned prejudice into the path for change.